Hey there, it's Roisin and Ruben here, and you're very welcome to my channel. Ruben's a bit sleepy because I just woke him up for his piece on camera, and he's a bit damp because it's pouring rain outside. So I've just filled in another sketchbook. This one's from June and July of this year. It's supposed to be summer, but we didn't get much of a summer. Do stick around till the very end when I share with you my favourite brands. Ruben's very cold. I'm going to bundle him up in a blanket. I hope you enjoy it. Now, as you know, I normally like to film my introduction bit outside, but look what happened to my gazebo. A gust of wind took it and blew it onto that chair. So between that and the weather, I am filming this indoors. Well, this is my June to July sketchbook, and it says summer sketching on the inside cover, but to be honest, we didn't really have much of a summer. But at the start of June, I didn't know that. It all stretched before us with the promise of many lazy long months to come. And in my back garden, we have a lot of wildflowers. They're all mown down to the ground now. They've gone over. But for a while, it was absolutely beautiful, a piece of paradise. The little bug you can see on the top left, the little cockchafer, he was drawn, was drawn during a workshop in early June. And then the rest of the flowers were added because the page was kind of looking a bit deserted and empty. And our back garden was full of bee orchids, so it's a beautiful place to be. This next one is a train journey between Galway and Dublin. And I always like to draw on the train because, it kills the time and it is such a lovely, peaceful thing to do. So you can just about make out my SketchPocket there in front of me. Well, one of the earlier versions anyway. And I drew that bloke with the long hair and the moustache, and he was very fun to draw. Then I drew the blonde girl on the left, but she didn't come out so well. So that's not much of a story. Another place I like to draw is on the bus. So this was after the train and onto the CityLink bus or wherever it was, on the way to wherever it was. I'm sorry, not being very helpful. But the good thing about drawing the bus driver is that he can't turn around and stop you. He just has to sit and drive the bus. So that's really good. And then the guys in the bottom left, they were fun to do too. Now, this one is one of my favourites. It's drawn and painted at Galway Docks, right in the heart of Galway City. And I always love sketching there because the boats are such bright colours and they do tend to hang around and you get loads of time to do them. And if it's a lovely day and it's not too cold, well then you haven't a complaint in the world. In fact, this painting, well, a version of it, I went back and did another one. It made its way into Kenny's gallery, art gallery of Kenny's. And it was sold, I think, on the very first day that it went up. That's always nice. You might be familiar with this next one because I presented it as a sketch along in one of my earlier videos. So if you're interested to see how I did it and maybe do a version of your own, you can go back maybe a month or something like that, or 2 months, and you can find it there step by step. This is a beach quite near me called Mulroog, and it's a place I go back to time and time again because it's just really clean and it's always deserted. It's lovely place to go with the dog. Well, I enjoyed doing the sketch of the boats at the dock so much that I went back and I saw this big red, well, it wasn't exactly rusty trawler, but it looked as if it might be. And I really enjoyed doing that because of all those reds and the reflection of the red in the water. And you can see the little boat on the left. It's got a really nice reflection just below the bit where the boat touches the water. That's because, I don't know about my kind of physics or anything, but sometimes you seem to have a very smooth, unchoppy patch just under the boat itself. I don't know, something to do with, well, I don't know, currents. But it just means that you get a really nice reflection just below the waterline, sometimes. Well, this one features in, again, one of my previous videos about the trip that my husband, Marcel, and I made to Inishbofin to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. And as our boat pulled into the harbour, we were looking at the sky going, there's a patch of blue over there. I'm sure there is. And sure enough, once we got into shore, the sun came out and I made this little sketch and it turned out to be the view out of our bedroom window. So that was really nice and it was lovely. It was very tranquil. And that same evening we went to the beach, a very hidden beach with nobody on it at all. We were the only people there, and it was paradise. We had to approach it via a very steep grassy hill, and then there was literally no one there. And we actually had to swim. The water was icy, but it was bracing and it was beautiful. And I wanted to somehow capture us having been there. So when we got changed and dressed, I drew our togs drying in the sun on that rock, and you can see the birds dipping into the sea. I drew one of the splashes where they swooped down and took a fish, I assume. And the colour of the water there, that is actually very typical of the west of Ireland. It's turquoise and blue and gorgeous. Little did I know that would be the only good weather we would have in the entire 3 days. But that night, Marcel and I went out for a gorgeous dinner, and we were sitting right next to these fantastic traditional musicians. And I know the guy in the front right, John is his name, and his surname escapes me for this very moment. But I used to teach his lovely daughter in art many years ago, and the music was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So the next day it was raining, but I drew the harbour from the living room window, which is kind of upstairs in the hotel where we were staying. And even as I look at this, that afternoon is brought back to me very strongly. And, you know, even though my childhood memories of Connemara are always perfectly sunny and warm, I have to be honest and tell you that the memory I have of sketching that harbour on that day when it was raining and stormy outside, for some strange reason it conjures up the feeling I had as a kid very strongly. So I think my memory might be playing tricks with me. For a change of scenery, we went into the pub next door, and it was lovely. Now, do you know what I find weird looking at this? You can see the group of people on the right, and I don't know about you guys, and I know a lot of you are American looking at this, but I think that group look really American. Now, they were American, so, you know, that's as it should be. But there's something about the set of the shoulders. Is it the baseball cap? I don't know. Is it the man spreading? No, Irish guys do that as well. I don't know what it is. Anyway, the barman is not American. He's from New Zealand. You can see him there in the specs. And he was really nice. He was very, very funny. And he was very chatty and helpful and just terrific. And I loved sketching there. Now, that afternoon in the pub, lovely though it wasn't enough to see away the bad weather. And in fact, a storm came in. The weather got worse. So we were stuck on the island for a few more hours than we'd intended to, because the ferry couldn't actually make it back to the mainland. And on the left there, you can see the ruins of a kind of a fort or a fortress or something. I don't know what the difference is. And that's a fortress, whatever, that Cromwell built. So I hate to think of people miserable in the bowels of that place, in the dungeon, in that weather. I don't know. Now, I drew the food that we had during our 3-day stay, and I drew it when Marcel and I were sitting on the ferry on the way home, because it's fun. It's a fun thing to do. So I drew the mussels, and I drew the prawns, the crab claws, and I drew the fish and chips, and I drew the cake, the lemon drizzle cake, and the orange cake, and the coffee, and I drew the open crab sandwich, and the trout, and I drew the scallops, and the sticky toffee pudding. Now, I don't normally go for sticky toffee pudding, but it was divine. It's so good. And not to forget the packet of tato, because we did eat rather a lot of tato. And if you are Irish, you know exactly what I mean when I say cheese and onion tato. Can't beat it. Now, these two guys are on the main street running through Galway city. They were very young. They're only young fellas, as we say here. And they were playing their instruments to their heart's content. And they were so professional. They were so good at it. So I stayed for ages. And I gave them a coin, which is really saying something for me, because I'm very stingy with money. Now, if you're fans of what I do, then you will recognise this piece from one of my previous sketch-along type of things. It was a beautiful afternoon, really hot and sunny. And I thought, well, I've got to mark this hot and sunny afternoon, because we really didn't have much this summer. So this is my studio at the end of the garden. And that's a tablecloth on the little table outside my studio, where sometimes my family and I have our meal. And it's fab. This was done in the Botanic gardens. And these are pitcher plants. And there was a good few flies buzzing around. And you really felt like saying to them, lads, you really don't need to be hanging around here. It's not safe for you. One time, Paddy, my son and I, we watched a wasp crawl up the side of a pitcher plant, and we didn't try and rescue it, but neither did we tip it in. We just watched. So I don't think that's too bad, unless, I don't know, that makes us a bit like, I don't know, spectators in a gladiator thing in the Colosseum. I don't know, maybe. But, you know, wasps, like, you know, they don't care when they sting us. I was there with my daughter, my eldest daughter, Honor, and we went outside after a while and we drew these beautiful lilies things outside in the garden, and they were very fun to paint, and it was a challenge to capture the white blossoms, but it's much easier when it's surrounded by dark. Okay, now this one is a sketch I made on the right of Houston Station. I had a good half hour, maybe more than that, 3/4 of an hour to wait before my train back to Galway. So I thought I'd just, paint Houston Station. But then these kind of rough people came out, and that guy there in the black t-shirt, he was real talk like that. And the three of them sat beside me on the bench. And I lost my nerve. I didn't have the guts to keep on sketching. They were literally right beside me. And they were enacting a whole scenario to do with the two young girls who were hanging out in a doorway opposite them. And, they were just girls minding their own business. But the guy in the black t-shirt, he kept going over to bother them, and the other fellas thought this was hilarious. The plump girl and the other fella, they were like, "Hey, did you get their number? Huh? Did you get their number? Did you get their digits?" And they were very, very rude then when the girls didn't want to have anything to do with them, and they were making very rude comments, which is all written down in the text right there. Well, to save you the bother, I'll read it out for you. Stop roaring, would you? Roaring means roaring, like shouting. Don't mind him, he's only out of the hospital. They bleeding blocked me. I'd do that blonde one. I'd bleed and do the both of them. Very rude. The girls were just, living their lives, and the guys just wouldn't leave them alone. That day I went to see Women Impressionists, an exhibition up in the National Gallery with my sister Fiona. She lives in Jamaica, but she was over for a visit, and we spent a very lovely time. Now, you see, the thing about this one is I was on my own. I arrived a bit early. And that's what's lovely about sketching. If you arrive somewhere early, you can get your cup of coffee, you can chill out and do whatever you need to do, and you can sketch. So you can arrive even an hour earlier than your arranged meeting time, and you'd be happy out just sketching the people. And I really enjoyed sketching those two blokes in the foreground. They were really, really nice to draw. My favourite bit about the exhibition was definitely Mary Cassatt. Her work was outstanding. Okay, this next one was the basis of a birthday card for my husband, who had a birthday in July. And he is half Mauritian, and we went to visit pink pigeons when we were living there some years ago. And this is what they look like. They're very cute. Here's another one that I did as a step-by-step, and it is of the ruin up the road from me, which is called Tyrone House, built in the late 1700s. And on a day like this, with the haystacks gleaming in the sunshine, it was gorgeous. And I sat in a little hedge and I painted, and I sat there all afternoon drawing the haystacks, and it was an absolute joy. And I felt like, I don't know, a kind of a maiden from the 19th century in a kind of a way. Here are more drawings from the train on the way from, Dublin to Galway or back again. Oh yeah, Dublin to Galway, because that old couple on the right, I drew them in Houston Station, sitting down, minding their own business. And the thing about the people on the left is, do you see the chap in the orange there? Well, he was kind of with the girl with the curly blonde hair, and she was with the fella with the dark sunglasses. And I was just drawing the girl with the blonde hair, and I was getting on great when suddenly, and she wasn't moving at all, suddenly your man in the orange t-shirt turns around and he goes, "Hey," and she goes, "Hi," and he goes, "I'm just saying hello." And I thought, oh, did you have to? That was it. Didn't have anything else to say. So that was the end of that pose. Well, this is one of those sketches that I'm not proud of. I don't like it. It was another one done in preparation for a birthday card for my younger daughter this time. And I was going to do this kind of like really cool gouache picture, but I hate the colour scheme. So on the right, I actually covered up my little column of colour swatches because they just look so awful. And I moved swiftly on to the next page. The really great thing about having your SketchPocket with you, or your sketching stuff, obviously it doesn't have to be in a SketchPocket, is that you can just draw whomever at a moment's notice, wherever. And so it was when my youngest daughter, curled up for half an hour to watch her show on the TV, and I was able to get this sketch of her, and I'm really glad I did it because she looks so cute. And there she is, all bundled up in a rug, and it's lovely. Now, the next day was her birthday, and we had whole prawns in their shells, and when I prepared them, I think this was done just before I cooked them actually. Yes, that's right, they were still raw, and I spilled them over the table in this artful disarray thing, and I painted them, and I really enjoyed painting them because they're so beautiful. Now this one is kind of, I suppose, doctored in a way. I cycled up the road and I had my little dog in his little bag, which I tie into the basket at the front of the bike. And it's all very well in theory because he loves going around the block on my bike with me. But then you're kind of a little bit, I suppose, hamstrung when you want to stop, because like, what do you do with the dog? You can't leave him in the bike, he'd fall over. So when I did this picture of the weeds in the hedges, it didn't really come out as well as I would have liked. So I went back to it and I filled in the background and I put in a load of other weeds. And I did this by standing in a different hedge so they don't match, which is why I'm not 100% happy with it. But it's definitely an improvement on what I'd done before. These crabs were painted from, I suppose, full colour originals of crabs that I picked up down in Mulroog. That's the beach that I showed you at the beginning of this little book. And I was trying to make a kind of like a toile de jouy kind of a pattern. And that's how they ended up being kind of like just one colour. These sketches of 2 beautifully packaged soaps that I bought. I actually bought them specifically to sketch. And there they sat in my drawer with all my clothes, hopefully making them smell nice. And then one day I didn't have the best day, kind of like an unproductive day. And it was evening and I had to bake the bread and get the dinner on and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, what am I going to do? I just need to cheer up. So I got out the 2 soaps and I started sketching them. I have to say, stick in a podcast into the ears, have the smell of baking bread wafting through the kitchen, and whatever you're making for dinner, preparing away on the stove. And it's a recipe, not just for dinner, but for happiness. Now, this sketch kind of shouldn't be in the book because it was done in August, but I was conducting a workshop there last week in Galway City, which I'll tell you about more anon. And I had 1 double page blank left in my sketchbook, and we can't have that. And it was either fill it in with something in August or fill it in with something random from whenever. And that's what I did. I filled it in with the boats from the Galway workshop, and it's the same place in the docks that I sketched before. And I have to tell you, I had a lovely time. What can I tell you? Beautiful boats, beautiful colours. It's all good. Well, I was going to leave this blank page blank because there was nothing on it. And then I thought, no, I will add a little something because I know you love to know all my brands. So here they all are. So we have your paint set. It's by Roman Schmal. And it has 12 colours plus 1, because to be honest with you, I couldn't decide on just 12 colours. So I said, sure, look at, I might as well add a 13th. Then it's got the A6 Hanamola sketchbook in 100% cotton, and it has a 55-degree foodie pen by Sailor. It has 2 little vials, one of which has brown ink by Detrimentus, one of which contains nothing at all, but which I fill with water because sometimes your water brush runs out of water and you do anything for a nice, fresh, clean drop. You've got 2 large-sized magnetic clips. You have a Sakura water brush, which is short and convenient, and you have a white gel pen, and then finally, oh yeah, and it's by Jelly Roll by Sakura. And then finally, you've got your Hanamola collapsible water container. So all these things come in the SketchPocket when you buy it. And they are what I use every single day in my SketchPocket. Granted, I have a couple of extra foodie pens, and granted, sometimes I bring an extra set of colours, but I don't need them and I rarely use them. What colours do we have? We've got Payne's Grey, we've got Phthalo Blue, we've got Ultramarine Intense, we've got Cherry Quinacridone Red, we've got Aquarius Orange and Aquarius Yellow. Then on the other side we have Burnt Umber, Burnt Sienna, Yellow Ochre, Aquarius Green, Sap Green and Phthalo Green. And the extra colour is Quinacridone Magenta. So there you go. There's your bits and pieces. I hope that helps. And I hope you find it all as useful and indispensable as I do. So guys, that's it. That's my last two months of my sketchbook and my life, I suppose. I'm already on to my next sketchbook. I'm well into it, and I look forward to hopefully sharing that with you when the time comes. See you next time.